My name is Kate Lovejoy. I'm the COO of the retargeting business at Adikteev. Adikteev is a mobile growth engine. We do everything after the install. So as a retargeting DSP, we help you grow your user base and make the most of your existing users. Today, I'm joined by Reggie from Adjust. And Reggie, I'll let you introduce yourself a bit.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Kate. So again, my name is Reggie Singh. I'm the Director of Partnerships at Adjust. And for those of you who are not familiar with Adjust, Adjust is a mobile measurement platform, essentially an SDK to measure where your users are coming from and where they're going afterwards. I've been with Adjust for about 6.5 years now, and previous to this, I was on the UA front at a company called Smule. So for all the marketers out there, I totally understand kind of what you're going through, and hopefully we can address a couple of the pain points you guys have, at least as it relates to churn here today.
Absolutely. So for today's talk, to kick things off, Reggie's going to talk about the problem of churn, which I think all of us in the mobile space have been facing and dealing with and trying to address. So he'll share with us some of the latest figures in the industry. And then I'll talk with you about a solution that Adikteev has for churn prediction. So moving from sort of rule-based methodologies for defining when a user will churn and starting to predict with machine learning when a user will churn. So Reggie, take it away.
Cool, thank you. So the next couple of slides you'll see here, I'm not going to go through them each specifically bullet point by bullet point. I'm sure you guys can read or see them, but essentially the theme here in the next 3 or 4 slides is that retention rates, and the data you're looking at here is looking at 2021 and 2022. And what you'll see and notice kind of the common thread or theme here is that retention rates have been pretty stable between the 2 years. And that's a good thing. For us as marketers, current marketers or former marketers, having that stability and predictability with retention is going to be really key to coming up with a proper strategy as it relates to churn. As you're really thinking about churn and creating a strategy, one really, really important point is as you go through these analysis, is the data that you're utilizing and where are you getting this data? So as you're really thinking about user acquisition, you really do have a leaky bucket problem. You know, too many of us are spending tons of time, tons of money acquiring lots and lots of new users, but sometimes we forget about, you know, the leaky bucket problem that we all deal with, whether you like it or not. Maybe that's related to product or aggressive monetization strategies, whatever it is, you're spending a ton of money acquiring users. You want them to stick around, especially in this economy. You want your money to go as far as it can.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that time and time again, that it's more efficient to keep a valuable user who you know has opened their wallet before, who's making purchases, than it is to go acquire a bunch of new, fresh installers.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know, kind of adding to that point, and thank you for bringing that up, Kate, is that, you know, with companies like Adjust or your MMP that you're using, you get a lot of data insights as it relates to retention and churn. And a couple of those data points, at least that we're looking at from our side at Adjust, is looking at session data, obviously retention, dormancy periods, how long have people gone inactive? Typically after 7 days, we consider that user dormant, and that's when they're kind of available for re-engagement. But in addition to that, we also measure things like uninstall. So many of us download so many apps where we're engaged for the first couple of months and then maybe leave it and not use it again. And then maybe once a year, you kind of go through your phone and delete a bunch. Really acquiring or reacquiring and re-engaging with those users is kind of the best bang for your buck.
Totally. And what we're trying to do is get an ad in front of the user at that moment when they're thinking about leaving your app, when they're thinking, maybe they're not as interested anymore, rather than, you know, showing them an ad when it's too late, when they've installed or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So utilizing a partner such as your MMP or Adjust and another partner like Adikteev to kind of complement your strategies is really, really key. It's like, why wait for that user to leave just to get them back again? Why not kind of maintain that user, keep them engaged on your platform rather than waiting for them to leave, and then you probably need to spend a lot more money to get them right back. So I think, you know, using some of the products that Adikteev and Kate's going to talk about here is really important to complement your strategy, not only utilizing the data points that your MMP is providing and also the tools when we're talking about audience and audience segmentation. So if that user has churned, you can create audiences and provide them to your partners, such as Adikteev, for them to utilize in their systems regarding retargeting, re-engaging, and obviously other tools that are available out there too, like push notifications and whatnot. So it's very key to kind of really work very closely with your partners, such as Adikteev, with the tools that you currently have and your data sets to really come up with a cohesive strategy as it relates to churn. And I think that being said, I think it'd be really interesting to see what Adikteev has on the churn predictions front.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we are all about predicting when a user will churn. I wanted to illustrate what this problem actually looks like. What are the pain points of churn? One is a blind spot for UA channel quality. So I think if I asked most marketers in the room, to score their vendors that they're working with, the partners that they're working with on likelihood of the users that they're bringing to churn, that would be a hard metric to really measure. Another real pain point that churn prediction solves for is moving from this rule-based methodology of we're going to target a user once they have lapsed for 7, 10, 15 days and then get an ad in front of them. Instead of using this rule-based methodology, we want to move to a predictive methodology. So again, getting them right when they're thinking about churning rather than waiting a set number of days for every single user. The problem that we see with waiting those X number of days is it's late, right? It's after the churn has already happened. We want to address it before it happens. When we're talking about user churn, it's not just churn that we're talking about revenue. And so a cool thing about our solution is that we can actually attach the revenue to the churn that you are addressing. So we want to be able to tell you, by getting in front of these users, there's a set dollar amount that you're going to be getting back by keeping them in your app ecosystem. Last thing that we're really solving for here when we talk about this problem of churn is, as Reggie mentioned, in today's economy, efficiency is really key. And we're all seeing that UA costs are rising, so it becomes all the more important to invest in keeping those users that you've spent this money to acquire.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 2023 is the year of retention, re-engagement.
Absolutely. It's not just about driving installs, it's about what we do with those installs after. So we are very proud of the models that we've created at Adikteev, but we know that this is a problem that a lot of gaming studios and other marketing companies have tried to address. So of course, we want you to use our model, but we do also want to share with you some actionable tips from our data science folks if you want to try creating a model in-house. We've actually ran head-to-heads of our model versus in-app models created by studios, and we've won out simply because this is really our area of focus, is on predicting churn as a retargeting company. So first tip is do not over-engineer things here. The way our team approached it is we used an existing model from outside of the ad tech sphere and then applied rules to it and adjusted it. So there's no need to really invent something wholly new. Use a baseline that exists and make the proper adjustments. We also think it's important to measure accuracy at the segment level versus the user level. So it's really hard to know what one individual user is going to do, but when you zoom out and look at it at a segment basis, that's when your predictions become more solid. So of course you want to validate your predictions always, validate them at the segment level and not the user level. In our experience, lastly, we've found it much better to focus on predicting churn instead of predicting LTV. It's really hard to know exactly how much a user is going to pay and for how long they're going to do so, but we do have enough data points to say if a user will leave or not. And if we're talking about very valuable payers, we can use this churn model as a proxy for what LTV will look like. So again, just some quick tips there.
No, those are great tips. And I think when you're really looking at these predictions and working with a partner such as Adikteev, I think you can really utilize the data set that you have available, the historical data set you see within Adjust, in really looking at your baseline. I think this is a really good strategy in general, is to really look at the retention rate by channel. looking at the
Yeah.
churn rate by channel. I think this is something that we should always be keeping updated on a moving window basis and really thinking about that. And as you kind of looking at these predictions and implementing some of these strategies, you can really see how that really compares to your baseline that your data providers are kind of highlighting in some of the data segments.
Absolutely. And I mean, the data is a key part of this. So we are relying on MMPs like Adjust to build our model. So the way that this is working is we are pulling in all of the organic postbacks that Adjust is sending for a given partner. So they'll send us all that session data, et cetera, and then we're using that to feed the individual model for the individual app that we are working with. To take a step back, what is the output of this churn prediction product that we're talking about? So what we'll give you is basically we take a look at all of your users and we come up with a score for each of those users. So that score is a number assigned per user from 0 to 1. 0 means this user is staying in app, they will not churn, they're great, they're gonna keep paying, don't worry about retargeting them. A score of 0.8, 0.9, or 1 means big red warning, that user is at risk of churning. Let's get a push notification in front of them. Let's serve them an ad. Let's keep them engaged, particularly if they are a valuable user. And so we're taking that score to basically define audience buckets for retargeting. So we have a bucket of users in that 0.1, that 0.2, 0.3, et cetera, and that 0.8, 0.9, and 1 score audience are the ones that we would run campaigns on for retargeting. Now, I am not going to walk you through all of these charts here. Don't worry, I saw some worried faces in the crowd. But basically, what I want to talk about here is how does churn prediction impact the retargeting strategies that you use today. So many folks in the room are probably working with a retargeting strategy that is rule-based. So like we talked about earlier, saying, I want to retarget users who have been lapsed 7 days. After 7 days of not opening the app, I will get an ad in front of them. What we've found in all of our studies is that inactivity window-based rules like this are actually a pretty good proxy. So we found, and you can see some data on that in the first chart there, that it works. Users who are 7 days lapsed are likely to be churned, but you're leaving a real missed opportunity on the table by waiting that 7 days. So here in the graph, you can see that there's this big pool of users that you're missing out on who have this high likelihood to churn, this 0.9, this 1, who are excluded from your audience list when we're talking about inactivity window-based buckets. We've talked about the problem of churn. We've talked about predicting churn. We've talked about getting an ad in front of those users. Your next question may be, well, does it actually work? Can you prevent churn from getting an ad in front of the user? And the answer is yes. So we've done many incrementality studies to say, what is the difference between the users who are in these various buckets who do not see a ad versus those that do? We saw a positive lift across all audiences, but the very strongest lift on the users that have the highest likelihood to churn. So those are the ones that it's very important to get an ad in front of. Accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. So I think this is the year of predictive analytics. You're hearing that probably at many of the talks today. For every time you hear that prediction word, I encourage you to challenge whoever says that to you. When you're talking about prediction, you can also validate those predictions, right? So if we tell you these users are going to churn, you can come back to us a month later and say, did those users actually churn? And so we are really strict with what we're working on and say, we need 85% plus accuracy on all of the models that we're using. I'm very proud to say that the models are achieving that. So we can say with above 85% certainty whether a user will churn or not. Below 0.8, don't touch it, don't go after that segment.
Yeah, and I mean, companies like Adjust can also, as a third party, really help provide this data to understand, hey, are those predictions, actually accurate? Are you seeing those churn? It's very easy to visualize within, your MMP dashboards. So you can really see the improvements pretty easily in real time.
Absolutely. We talked about using this for retargeting with DSP. You can also use these audience lists across other channels that you're working with. So we create this audience list for you of users who are very likely to churn. You can use that for meta retargeting, TikTok retargeting, Twitter, really across the board, depending on what your use case is.
Yeah, I think that's a really good feature there. And, I think there's a lot of talk about preventing churn, which is great. That's just moving forward. But what about all those people that have already churned?
Right.
I spent millions and millions of dollars and lost tons and tons of users. I think you can also utilize audiences, especially from a company like Adjust, to create segments of audience or users that have already churned and try to get those people re-engaged as a parallel strategy with preventing churn moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of a full holistic approach here. We're not saying that you should only use this kind of churn prediction audience. You really want to have a holistic retargeting strategy, which is where partners like Adjust and Adikteev work together to solve all of your churn problems. So in sum, overall, basically what we're suggesting here is segment your users by churn risk and predict your future revenue. So we have a very strong accuracy. It works at scale. Churn prediction amplifies a rule-based strategy that you already have in place, and it can also strengthen your retargeting on social. So really, we see this as the evolution of retargeting, going from rule-based to this very cool predictive technology. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me at kate@adikteev.com or come find me at the Cabanas by the Lazy River, so 15 and 16. This is one of my favorite topics, so happy to discuss it with any of you further.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Reggie. I really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, everyone.